What a lovely response for the Villa boys from Aston. The thing about Saturday games is, if they go south like last weekend, it ruins your entire weekend. But conversely, Sunday games, if you have a really good performance like they did on Sunday, well, you don't get to savor it quite as much somehow. I found some very encouraging moments in this match. I'll show you some video. Look ahead to an exciting week with Hibs and the Europa Conference League playoff as we dissect Aston Villa 4, Everton 0. Alex Dutton, guitar legend in the Birmingham-based metal outfit Atarka, was kind enough to roll some video for the show, and even from 7,500 miles away, you could still feel a whiff of anxiety around this match, not helped by the Lionesses' disappointment. But Fortress Villa Park looked grand, where Aston Villa has now won 8 on the bounce, which equals our exploits from the 1990 season, the year McGraw and York joined. Will we one day look back and say, oh yeah, remember 2023, the year Torres and Diaby joined us? Welcome officially to the Holy Trinity show, which is the 3 key moments or issues that defined Aston Villa 4, Everton 0, and we'll start with the key numbers. I looked at Pau Torres' accurate long balls, and I'm going to tell you that those will improve over the course of the season. He was 3 for 8 today, but we dominated everywhere. Anytime you have 90% or above on accurate passes, when you have 60% of the possession, that's good. So Torres' accurate long balls only 38%, but when his teammates figure out that he could find them, that number is going to improve. Paul Hansaker from 24/7 Services watched this game from abroad because he's on a men do right now, which is a hen do just with men. And I'm thrilled to report that his dad, Ron, the governor, just had some maintenance work done on his engine, and everything went perfectly, so well, in fact, he was released in time to watch the Everton game. And it's a good time to start thinking about maintenance, isn't it? With fall kind of on the horizon here. What's the state of your heating system? How's your roof? Spending more time indoors. Do you want to do a little interior design or decorating project? Maybe a custom paint job? 24/7 can do all of it. The numbers are here below. I've included them in the description along with the website online form. By the way, how do you like what I'm wearing? This is what the medical staff and the physios wear, which I thought would be appropriate this week. If you like it, there's a link in the description below. Now let's put some context to this game straight out of the gate. That was easily the worst Everton team we'll see at Villa Park in a long time, if we even see them again at Villa Park for a long time, because I'm sorry, that is a relegation candidate team if I've ever seen one. Pray for Everton fans, because if they go down as they're unveiling their new stadium next year that they have to pay off, that could be catastrophic, and I find it impossible to believe that we will have a softer touch opponent for the remainder of the season. And what I find incredible is that this was the same match week as last year, where half of our current squad also started, and yet we made hard work of that game last year. In fact, we almost conceded late. That's how different the squad is 1 year later. Half of it is gone, of course. And yes, we had a poor opponent that gifted us our 2 second-half goals, but we also made them look poor with our dominance in virtually every single category as illustrated by the stats. Key issue, the clean sheet. When Unai Emery talks about being demanding each and every day and pushing his players to be better, well, here's a great example at the end of the first half when he really gave it to his team for being very sloppy out of possession. Well, in a game when you're in complete control, to concede would have been extremely irritating to him. And for Emi Martinez, who was virtually a spectator in this match, he had to come up with a couple of big moments. This was the biggest one for me off a corner, and Neil Mopai. This is not straightforward for a guy who's been standing and watching. So to earn this clean sheet, set the stall out for the new year, is a huge thing for this club. And in this 8-game winning streak at Villa Park, We've conceded only twice against Spurs and Brighton. That's Fortress Villa Park. Big moment. Composed Colombian. I was shocked John Duran was even in the squad, even more shocked when he was introduced because we haven't seen hide nor hair of this guy throughout preseason. And 30 seconds within stepping on the field, he is presented with a wonderful assist from his former teammate in Ashley Young. Second touch, not the best, but the third was beautiful, and this will give Duran a world of confidence, not to mention others' confidence in him, because this is a player who could turn out to be a proper unit for us. You see when he closes down, all arms, all legs, this big guy with a very composed finish. And let's hope that he now has the hunger and the humility to want more and get more, because we signed him for a good fee and leapt in front of many others in the queue. Big moment, little Phil felled. The initial prognosis was a couple of weeks hamstring. It looked a lot worse than that, the way he reacted and could barely hobble off. But this is the reason why we have to move this player on. He is never consistently fit long enough. I know a lot of players love what he can do. He elicited oohs and ahs with flicks and tricks. He's had a brilliant career, but we simply cannot justify those wages for a bit part player. Lots of links to the Middle East, and their transfer window lasts longer than ours. So let's hope that in a couple of weeks we can get this guy patched up and move him out. Big issue, dead ball dominance. There was a consistent theme to Aston Villa's corner kick strategy in that they never crossed it into the box. Only once did they kind of half cross it, and that was directly to John McGinn at the edge of the box. The rest of the time, it was played short. And here's where mathematics and percentages drive Austin McPhee's strategy and methodology in the technical side. Because if you just cross it into the box, that's low percentage, the proverbial 50-50 ball. The delivery has to be perfect, somebody has to win a duel, and then your header or your shot has to hit the target. Instead, Villa is keeping the ball on the floor, changing the angle of attack, or trying to get into the more high percentages, higher XG areas of the box. And for whatever reason in this game, Everton did not clue in, switch on, close down, none of it. So we were allowed to get into really good areas. And although we didn't score from any of them, we did create opportunities. And it's certainly a more interesting approach to watch. Other teams are going to have to be switched on. And if they take the short option away, well, Douglas Luiz or whoever can send it into the box. Big issue, the post-Mings mindset. And the two players most impacted by Tyrone Mings' injury, Pau Torres and Ezri Konsa, had beautifully sublime, clean performances on Sunday. And yes, that was a poor opponent. And literally every other test this year will be much stiffer. But to get to know one another a little bit better, to learn about each other a little bit more, and to see how much they were composed on the ball. Oh, getting those minutes under the belt was so good. And then if you want to add to the really effective, without being glamorous kind of performances, throw Boubacar Kamara in there and Carlos and Tielemans when they came on, to get those confidence-boosting minutes beneath you in a game that had no stress. So important. Big moment, big issue. Dougie delivers. It makes perfect sense that Douglas Luiz is now on penalty duty because he plays all the time. I know John McGinn was probably in the discussion as well, but there is a completely different vibe and feeling when Luiz is standing 12 yards away than when Watkins is. And I was very encouraged and pleased to see, because you know I'm an admirer of Ollie Watkins, how genuinely well chuffed he looked for Luiz burying the penalty, giving them the 2-goal cushion, because you know a lot of strikers who are inherently greedy, many of whom are on goal bonuses, would have pouted over having penalty duties taken away from them. But the fact is, 5 out of the last 9, including in preseason, simply is not a good enough ratio. Let's talk about the 1-0 goal. It could have been the biggest moment in the match, but I love this goal. I call this the perfect goal. And in my coaching life, I tell my players to attack this area of the box relentlessly because defenders and goalkeepers hate this area of the box because they can't look at two things at the same time. Every set of Everton eyes is on the ball and Leon Bailey when John McGinn makes the break, and he could have scored with his eyes closed. He just guides it into the goal. This is like a well-choreographed dance move almost. This is straight out of the Manchester City book, by the way. Attack that area of the box and you will earn either a corner, a penalty, a goal. We got to keep doing that because after a 17-pass move, that was as good as it gets. Not a huge issue, but an issue nonetheless. Unhappy Cam. Purr. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but Cam Archer looks miserable. And you can't really blame him because he wants to play. He's just come off a winning campaign with England in the summer. He was lighting it up in the championship 2 years in a row. And he had to stand and watch as John Duran came on the field first for Ollie Watkins, even though he had nothing to do with the preseason. I can't for a minute believe that Villa will let Archer go without having a replacement lined up first. But I'd be shocked if Archer is not unloaded at the end of the window, especially if we can work out a buyback clause, which is smart business. And that's also a good time because, you know, you're going to get some desperate clubs, maybe a bidding war, and maybe some will sweeten the pot to land him. Big issue number 3. Brilliant bad boy Bailey. I received quite a few messages upon waking at 5 a.m. on Sunday bemoaning the fact that Leon Bailey was again in the starting 11 and that Jadon Philogene-Bidace had been omitted from the squad altogether. We learned later that he is close to a move to Hull City with a similar kind of buyback clause as Aaron Ramsey, which actually is clever business. Players are going to get criticized. That's the nature of football. And last week, Leon Bailey was a peripheral character who really didn't expend a whole lot of extra graft on the 1-0 goal to the point that he was actually dragged at halftime. Now we learn that he's been struggling with a back problem, which can be really debilitating for a player that requires power in his pace and his finishing. So maybe we shouldn't be so quick to judge all the time. And he had a hand in all of Villa's first 3 goals. The goal he scored was a wonderful piece of awareness where he and Luca Digne simply made split-second eye contact. That's all it took. And from there, he slots it. His header down, a controlled header for Ollie Watkins, leads to the penalty, which was a wonderful contribution. And, well, I don't need to tell you how vital his role was in the 1-0 goal. I've been hard on Bailey, and it's frustrating when a player is always injured. But you know what? That's not his fault. And wouldn't we all just love to see Leon Bailey have a prolonged period where he's confident and where his body feels good and doesn't let him down, because the two go hand in hand. As we saw on Sunday, he could be handy. Then after the game came this juicy rumor that the police was investigating Bailey for having some kind of an altercation with a supporter near his suite. I asked some of my friends in the Trinity hospitality if they had heard or seen anything, and they hadn't. And then that's on top of some Twitter tittle tattle that had him being chased by the police on a ski-doo while on vacation. Now, I am not going to make any judgments without having the actual facts on any matter. But here's what I do know about bad boys. They're always bad boys. And for some reason, the girls just seem to like them more. Big issue number 2, delightful Digne. If that wasn't Luca Digne's best performance in an Aston Villa shirt, ironically against his former club, and at a time when he's rumored to be heading out the door, well, I'd like to see a better outing by Villa's French fullback. He was heavily involved in the game at both ends of the park, including the 3-0 goal, which I alluded to earlier, but he made some very clever defensive interventions, and his touch was honestly immaculate all game long. I have zero grievances with Luca Digne. I want him to be happy and successful, but the fact of the matter was, He was an impulse buy, and no player probably better represents the then and now of our recruitment strategy than Digne. Because here's the problem. He's the joint top earner with Boubacar Kamara. Meanwhile, Douglas Luiz is 13th on that list, earning half as much as Luca Digne. That's a problem. Luiz is due for a raise if we want to keep him. And one of the ways we can help facilitate that is by moving the Frenchman's salary out the door. We've heard a lot of rumors surrounding Marcos Acuna from Sevilla. Then there were some rumors that the deal collapsed and they're looking elsewhere. Who knows what to believe, but Acuna would be a fantastic signing, the 31-year-old World Cup winner. And with Alex Moreno would give us two very good two-way left backs. I think Acuna leaning a little bit more to the defensively robust side of that pairing. Now, Luca Digne's been rumored to be moving to either Saudi Arabia on a sale, Aston Villa asking for 20 million apparently, or recently a loan move to Nice, which is what he would prefer, and the idea would be that the club takes on his salary, which I think would be very good business. And the number one issue that defined Aston Villa 4, Everton 0, monstrous McGinn. It's funny because a year ago in this same fixture, in the same match week, John McGinn was easily and by far the man of the match, and I think he edges it over Leon Bailey here today, especially given how important that 1-0 goal was. He was lined up on the left side of the three in a 4-2-3-1. That's how I saw it anyway, with Diaby and Bailey. And when he's in that position, like with Scotland, when he's allowed to join the attack and play on the half turn, he looks so good. I want him in the high traffic areas because he is so good at leveraging himself using his pronounced seat. I have one of those too, by the way. And I counted at least, off the top of my head, 3 McGinnian spinoramas. Ezri Konsa said it. When John McGinn is upfield, battling, grafting, being competitive, working his tail off, it sets the tone for all of us. And that is the definition of a captain. Now, the one issue about Moussa Diaby operating in the pocket behind Ollie Watkins, the 10 spot, is that, like Emi Buendia, his stature can make him easy to crowd out or sometimes bully off the ball entirely. But we're thin at the moment, and so Unai Emery is having to make do. And thankfully, our squad is adaptable and versatile enough to deal with these issues. But I'll be curious when Jacob Ramsey is fully fit and when Nicolo Zaniolo is available for selection, how the Premier League squad, anyway, will be reimagined, because there's a case to be made that Zaniolo could operate in the pocket behind Watkins, even though his favorite part of the field is the inside right half channel. Still, nobody is usurping John McGinn from this squad for the foreseeable future. Consider where he was this time last year, sometimes inconsistent. Not now. It feels to me like John McGinn has grown into the leader that everybody wanted him to be and knew he could be. And most importantly, it looks like McGinn is really enjoying his football, and long may that continue. Speaking of Guinea, and is there another player in the world that even reminds you of John McGinn and what he does? I don't think there is, but it's the first leg of our Europa Conference League playoff series in Edinburgh against Hibernian. Hibs, McGinn's former team. It's the John McGinn derby. And because we won comfortably on Sunday, we can approach this match now with excitement and not angst. And because we rotated relatively early, pulling Douglas Luiz and Moussa Diaby off at around the hour mark, it'll be interesting to see how we rotate and line up in Scotland. But this is the series that will determine whether we get 6 more games in the fall, which helps us on the profile side, the revenue side, and most importantly, and what Unai Emery wants, more competitive matches. I had forgotten that Lee Johnson was in charge at Hibs, which made me chuckle a little bit because I'm German, I have the memory of an elephant, and I hold grudges, and I do engage in this concept of Schadenfreude, which is when you take delight in others' misery. And I remember when Lee Johnson was in charge of Bristol City when we were playing in the championship together, the man made excuse after excuse, whined and moaned incessantly, like how his traveling support had to sit in the Doug Ellis stand. He is the king of excuse makers, and he's already started. He's complaining that the match had to be rescheduled to Wednesday. So if you fancy a wager, kind of like Lucas Paquetà's family and friends, put a punt on Lee Johnson complaining, whining, or moaning, or making an excuse about something over the course of this series. Oh, it's always more fun to tally up the statistics that we cover throughout the year when Villa wins, and how crucial was it to wipe out that -4 goal difference in week number 2. Wow, is Villa Park becoming a fortress. It is becoming one of the hardest places to visit, and long may it stay that way. Getting our first 3 points of the season at home. We're now 0 on the set pieces because a penalty is a set piece. We got the clean sheet, and we're only in the minus ledger on the second half plus minus, but I think we'll be turning that around soon as well. Now, depending on whether I'll even be able to watch the match because my local service hasn't scheduled the Hibs game yet, I'll either have a review from the first leg, or I'll be talking to you following a trip to Turf Moor and Burnley, which is also a very interesting early season test. We dominated the last time we went there after having some troubles before then, and it's interesting because Vincent Kompany's men have had to sit and stew over their opening week 3-0 loss at home to Manchester City because Kenilworth Road is not ready in Luton, so they've had to sit around all this time in what could be, a very positive week for our club. Until then, enjoy the late summer sunshine, and as always, up the mighty Villa.